So, kia ora, my name's Glenn Edney, and I'm an ocean ecologist working out here on Aotea. I'm working with the community out here, and we are focused on ahu moana. And ahu moana is the idea of local monitoring and management of the local marine space, and that's sort of this partnership between mana whenua, the wider local community, and the moana. So it's pretty exciting stuff, yeah. What we're finding and seeing is a mixture of good news and bad news. So the good news is the ability for local people to actually be able to monitor the marine space for themselves and be able to make adaptive management decisions from their own monitoring. That's the good news. The bad news is that things aren't as good as we would like them to be. Now, there's several important things that are going on. Some of it's to do with overfishing, some of it's to do with habitat degradation, so the whole ecosystem itself is actually suffering, so the overall health of the place is actually suffering. And then that's manifesting in a variety of ways. So one of the ways that manifests is, of course, a lack of food for a lot of species. And one of the really big examples of that's been happening recently is this thing about the snapper having white mushy flesh. So a lot of people are catching fish, and like one local told me that 4 out of 7 fish that he's been catching have had this white mushy flesh. That's just from around the southern part of the island. That's pretty disturbing. They don't want to eat them. And the other thing about those fish is that they look really skinny. So when you look down on them, they're like their shoulders look really thin. And so the possibility that it's malnutrition, in other words that they are starving, is a real possibility. I think that there's other factors that might be coming into it, but ultimately it's because their home is not well, and that's manifesting in terms of malnutrition and possibly other things. So there's a whole bunch of other things that are going on, and a lot of people are really aware of the idea of kina barrens. The problem of kina barrens has been growing over the last few years. What we understand about them now is that they are largely due to the overfishing of kina predators. Two of the primary kina predators, of course, are taumuri, the snapper, and koda, crayfish. We love them. Unfortunately, we're loving them a bit too much, and so this is creating a huge imbalance on the reef. Kina barrens happen when there's not enough predators. The kina, whose favourite food is Aclonia kelp, so the kina barrens are a big problem, and of course the kina love to eat kelp. That's their favourite food, and so when you don't have enough predators like the koda and the taumuri, the snapper, then we start to get that imbalance. The kina barrens, once they establish, it's really hard for the kelp to regrow. But the poor kina, we've got to feel sorry for them as well. It's not their fault, but they become really sickly, they become really skinny and sour, and nobody wants to eat them, and they're just eking out this really poor living on the reef, struggling to get enough to eat. So it's a lose-lose situation. What we can do is we can help that situation. There's quite a few things that we can do. We can, of course, just do some kina management. In other words, remove some kina from the reefs. That's going to help a bit. It's going to take quite a long time for those kelp forests to regenerate. What we can also do at the same time is we can do some kelp regeneration. So we can actually propagate the kelp and replant. So that's a little bit more involved, but at a community level, it's actually possible to do that. But then the other thing that we can do, which is the easiest thing that we can do, is we can go, maybe we shouldn't catch so many snapper and crayfish. So if we actually just do a little bit of behavioural change ourselves, limit how much we're taking, not stop taking completely, we're part of this place as well, but if we limit that, and we do a little bit of kina management, and we help the kelp regenerate, well, things will bounce back really, really quickly. And so, you know, we've got reason to be positive as long as we take positive action. Right, so you know Aotea is this magnet for marine life. So you know, we get manta rays around here, we get all sorts of marine mammal species. One of the most beautiful of those species is the Brooder's whale. It's spelt like brides, but it actually pronounced brooders. And they're a large baleen whale, so they've got the baleen and they filter small fish and krill and things out of the water. And they grow to about 15 metres long. Now what's really amazing about these Brooder's whales is that they live in the subtropical and temperate zones of the world's ocean. And so they stay there all year round. They don't really migrate like all of the other whales, like the humpback whales and the blue whales, and you know, they're covering these massive migrations. But the Brooder's whales, they're a bit of homebodies. They like to stay at home and they feed all year round. They breed here, they give birth to their calves here. So that means that they're very, very reliant on a healthy local ecosystem. And so when we take out too many of the fish that they like to eat, like the pilchards and the small sardines and things like that, if we take them out, they got nothing to eat. They also eat large zooplankton, like large krill and things like that. And those sort of things, they rely on those fish as well. They rely on those fish bringing up the phytoplankton to the surface and the small zooplankton to the surface. So it's this whole web of life near the surface of the ocean that those Brooder's whales play a huge part in. Here's something really cool about them. They don't just take, they give. Because when they're at the surface and they're feeding, right, they then of course have to do what all animals have to do. Once they've had a good feed, something's got to come out the other end, right? So when they poo basically at the surface of the ocean, that means that they are then spreading out this nutrient love across the surface of the ocean, which is exactly what the phytoplankton need, which is exactly what the zooplankton need, because they'll feed on the phytoplankton, which is exactly what those pilchards and everything need, which is exactly what the larger predator fish need, what the sharks need. And so that whole food web is kind of supercharged by these super beautiful big baleen whales. It's just beautiful. Be able to stand on the shore and see those whales blowing and feeding just straight from the shore, that is so special, and that is part of Aotea. It's part of the Hauraki Gulf that we have to cherish and make sure that we protect.